All right, Nicholas, I'm so glad you're with us today on our podcast. Please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, thank you for having me on here. Hello, my name is Nicholas Marshall. I'm a junior studying aerospace engineering at Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University, studying aeronautics, specifically that track. I have uh, the pandemic has been really weird at Riddle. I took a semester off where I ended up working in an escape room, but now that I'm back at school, I'm continuing my involvement on design build fly at Embry-Riddle, and just managing to get around my classes too has been quite interesting.
Right. Could you elaborate a little bit for our listeners that maybe do not know what design build fly is?
Design build fly is an annual competition. It's an international one held through AIAA, where you design, build, and fly your homemade RC aircraft. And each year you have mission constraints. They swap back and forth between a civilian application. In that case, that competition is held in Wichita, Kansas. And then you have a military application, that competition is held in Tucson, Arizona. This year, it's a civilian application, and we have to develop a plane that can not only hold vaccines, but deliver vials during the competition.
Is this required? Is it a fixed wing or a drone or a helicopter or?
This is a fixed wing RC aircraft. And that is the case because you have to, not only do you have to carry a lot of payload, and you have takeoff requirements too, but you also have to complete a lap. So how the lap goes is you take off, you go 250 feet, someone will flag you. So you make a 180-degree turn, and then you fly, well, at least for this year, you fly straight for 500 feet, but you also have to complete a 360-degree turn in the process, so a loop. And then after you go that 500 feet, you'll get flagged. You make the turn, and then you land on the runway and do your mission, and then take off again. And just you have to complete, for some competitions you have to do 3 laps, and then others you have to complete the maximum amount of laps you can in the time. So
This reminds me of both TARC and CubeSats, right? Where you have power, mass, size constraints. Are you constrained on the wingspan of your aircraft, or the horsepower, or the fuel source? All of the above?
That varies per year. I know one of the constraints this year is you have, and that's just generally with the civilian applications too, you have a takeoff field length. This year it's a maximum of 25 feet.
Oh, wow. So it's got to be a very quick, like I'm sorry, I'm trying to think of the word, like a short runway, like the VTOLs, right? Sort of like the Harriers, or not quite that extreme?
Not that quite extreme, no. We just have to have quick acceleration. And I believe this year too, we are limited on the motor and the batteries. I know we're limited on the batteries, but we're limited on the motor and the batteries. So we're given different constraints per year.
Okay. Are you ever in your studies at Embry-Riddle required to do electric aircraft? And do you see that as real viable in the future, that we have aircraft that are powered up with the solar cells on the wings?
As of right now, we haven't really been studying electric aircraft or electric propulsion just yet because it's so new. I mean, of course we have hypersonic classes, some of which actually take place right after some of mine. So as soon as I'm leaving, a hypersonic class is actually coming in. But I haven't seen any electric because it's so new, and the technology really hasn't been proven too much. I mean, the aircraft that they're currently working on right now that are going to have civilian applications, they're still years away, and they're not going to have the best range to begin with. Like the one United sponsored, that one will be, only seat 20 passengers and fly maybe 250 nautical miles, I think. Correct me if I'm wrong.
I'm not sure, so that's why I'm asking you. So I know they'll, all new technology, if it were easy, it would have already been done, right?
Oh yes, yeah, it would be. And thankfully we have electric cars to base some of the technology off of. And I do hope that it goes through, because that will mean just a cleaner environment for the future. But
Right.
as of right now, that technology is unproven and it's still undergoing a lot of testing and evaluation. So until then, we haven't, but that hasn't stopped students from asking a whole bunch of questions. We have
Right.
speakers come in every once in a while. This month, we actually have the Apollo 13 astronaut Fred Hayes coming to speak at our school,
Nice.
and we get to ask questions to all these different people. I believe one of the last major ones we had was actually the VP of Boeing, who was the the student government president. And of course, we ask, different people about electric aircraft, and it certainly is an interesting topic.
Right.
And students are interested, but as of right now, there's nothing really to teach because they're learning it as we are. So
Right. Right. I met Fred Hayes at a Miss Lear's banquet in Cocoa Beach a few years ago with my students. He is what his reputation is. He's an engineer's engineer, right? He's an engineer that happened to be an astronaut because he went back into engineering management after Apollo 13. And funny story, I was just walking with him to introduce him to the kids at a big poster we had, trifold. And I said, what did you think about Bill Paxton and the job he did playing you in the movie Apollo 13? He goes, they just wrote up all that dialogue to sort of sensationalize the event. We were just stuck in a can. It was all right. He just downplayed the whole Apollo 13 event, which, I know you've probably seen that movie. It's fantastic, but he is a really neat guy. I hope you get to talk to him. Those guys, they're getting so old and there's so few of them left, but they really did remarkable things. So let me pivot real quickly. You've been talking about some of the happenings at Embry-Riddle. Let's talk about Embry-Riddle in general. Maybe also mention the Michaelplex, your academic program, and aeronautics in particular, and the facility. So any one of those areas, let's jump in and have you share with us about Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University.
well, Embry-Riddle is, I'd call it a medium-sized campus, though some people consider it small. There are two different campuses for Embry-Riddle. There's technically three. There's Embry-Riddle Daytona, which I attend. It has about 6,000 students, both undergrad and graduate students. And it's spread across different colleges, like College of Aviation, College of Arts and Sciences, which includes the physics majors, the College of Engineering, which I attend, and the College of Aviation and College of Mechanical or Mechanics, basically. And of course, we have a wide variety of majors, like I'm Aerospace Engineering, there are Aerospace Physiology, Engineering Physics, there's being a pilot, of course,
Right.
and being a mechanic, and aviation business. We have that. Then there's Embry-Riddle Prescott, which is out in Prescott, Arizona. It's smaller, but it has about the same number of programs, if not maybe a couple of different ones. Like I know they train NTSB investigators out there, whereas I don't think they really do that in Daytona. And then there's Embry-Riddle Worldwide, which is a mix of online learning, and they have some remote learning stations across the country. Embry-Riddle Worldwide is one of the biggest universities at military installations.
That's what I'm aware of. Yes.
It's one of the four, I believe, that go there. In fact, I grew up in Virginia Beach, Virginia, and of course, I would go to a Naval Air Station Oceana a couple times. Which, for those you don't know, Oceana is the largest naval air base in the world and the only one currently located on the Atlantic Ocean. We were going there for the air show that's hosted there every year, which if you get a chance to go, it's fun. It's usually held in September.
Right.
And sure enough, we saw an Embry-Riddle Worldwide campus while we were there. It wasn't that big, but we could say, oh, look, Embry-Riddle.
Well, that brings to my mind, are you a Navy kid? Or you have family in Navy? Or
no, both of my parents work for municipal government, though my dad, as a firefighter, he worked somewhat closely with the military because they had to train for all certain scenarios, like planes going down, missiles getting loose and impacting civilians, which luckily that has never happened.
Yes, and you mentioned, and when you were describing the Prescott, Arizona campus, you used the acronym NTSB, and then you mentioned a plane crash, which brings to my mind recently we had a plane crash in China, right? A Boeing 737-800. And NTSB, I read somewhere they're sending someone there because it's an American aircraft. NTSB stands for?
National Transportation Safety Board.
Yes, very good. They are the keepers of the black boxes, I guess. So I actually saw a YouTube video where a guy took a saw and he had an old black box and he cut into it. And it was amazing the way that thing is packaged. And it's really just looked like a printed circuit board deep within inside this casing, I guess, to withstand shock and heat. So tell me a little bit more about campus life and the aeronautics program at Daytona Beach, Embry-Riddle.
Campus life, it's very interesting. So a lot of the buildings in Embry-Riddle are new or new-ish, like they were built within the past 10, maybe 15 years in the case of the College of Business, though that was built, I believe, in 2008. But when I first arrived on campus, I actually got into a brand new dorm, New Res 2, which on campus, there are several dorms, but for some reason they have New Res 1, New Res 2, and New Res 3 because someone hasn't pitched in the money yet to name it after themselves.
Yes. That's the way it works, right?
And instead of calling them maybe a name that will be changed later, like, oh, we're just calling it New Res 1, New Res 2, New Res 3. I'm curious how long it's going to keep that name.
That's interesting.
But yeah, New Res 2 I lived in, and of course I had a roommate, and then I had two suite mates next to me. We shared a bathroom and two sinks, which got cleaned every week, which that was a real nice perk to have on campus.
Yeah, college kids are sort of messy. I stayed in a dorm there for a summer camp, an aerospace camp for educators, and I could almost look down into the Daytona 500. Are you able to see the racetrack from your dormitory?
I was my freshman year. I was able to see it my freshman year. My sophomore year, I moved into O'Connor, which is situated, it's a different part of campus, but I got a runway view. So, or not,
Okay.
no, not a runway view. I got a view of the plane's landing. One time I was in my room, and I looked out, I saw a bright light. There was a plane actually coming in for a landing. Like I could see the lights on it. I was like, oh my gosh.
Yes.
So that was a completely different view, which was nice.
Right. Now, are your dorms insulated so that you don't hear the aircraft or even can you hear the racetrack when the cars are the track?
Oh, we can hear the racetrack.
Yeah, I was thinking that's a pretty big deal. I was there
especially the 24-hour races, you can hear them.
Yeah, that's somebody making money. That's the sound of somebody making some money. So
or college students working over there. So
right. Is now Embry-Riddle, of course, their reputation is for aviation and space, right? Whatever you're going to do there, it's going to be something about flying in some way. Is there I think there's ROTC there also. Isn't there for the folks interested in military?
Yes. Embry-Riddle is has one of the largest ROTC programs in the country and delivers the most amount of officers to different military branches. And I believe we are one of the top universities, excluding, of course, like the Air Force Academy, the Naval Academy, West Point, which, those automatically get into the military. But we tend to have the best reputation for getting people into the military. And it's very competitive too.
Yes, yes.
I have friends who have done it. Usually, or at least how the Air Force works. I'm not sure about the other branches, but my friends have gone through the Air Force. Basically, they have 2 years where they do training and they work together as a team. And then after that point is when a lot of members get cut for various reasons. And even, of course, you have less than, I'd say, a quarter of the people who start out as a freshman at that point. And then only a select few get to go into the Air Force from there.
Right. Very cool. Since we're looking around and talking about campus, I wonder if you might share what you know about the Microplex, which is relatively new at Embry-Riddle.
The Microplex, for those of you who don't know, is it's close to campus, but it's technically off-campus research park where several companies go and do research closely associated with Embry-Riddle and their students, where they provide internships, co-ops, and just other resources for businesses that they wouldn't necessarily get otherwise. We have several companies already over there like Boeing and I believe Lockheed Martin. And it's also a place too where startups can happen. In fact, my suite mate actually just did a competition over there for where he did a startup, not a real one, of course, at least not yet, but he and one of his partner did a competition for, creating a startup. He did all the research and he did a major presentation for that. I live off campus. I'm actually relatively close to the Microplex. And I was just talking to one of my friends the other day, and some classes are taking place in the Microplex, though mostly just like maybe for 1 or 2 classes, you get to see what it's like and use the labs and just know about it in general.
Right. I met one of the startups CEO there. He just got his PhD from FIU. His company focuses on extremely high altitude balloons, and it's about the material science, right? So I won't begin to try to elaborate on his company, but he is actually one of the occupants there. So he gets to stay there a certain amount of time, and they give him resources. I think are great. I think young people with their companies need an incubator, then you need an accelerator, then of course you get investors, and then you go buy helicopters and yachts, I guess. So but fantastic. How did you and I meet? Let's talk about the event that brought us together, that brought you into the circle that I'm in, and what were your experiences there? So I'll let you go ahead and explain that.
So how it started, I went to my school's chapter for AIAA meeting, where it was announced that, oh yeah, Florida is looking for team members for Congressional Visit Day, where you would go meet with congressional staffers or maybe even the congresspeople themselves and promote things that the National AIA organization wants to promote. This year we had 4 topics. We had sustainability in aviation and the industry in general, innovation and research, recovery from the pandemic, and diversification of the workforce, if I remember correctly.
You did a really good job. Yes. And for those that are, I know we've talked about the AIAA in previous episodes, but for those that may not know, the AIAA is the American Institute of Aeronautics and Astronautics, the world's largest organization for aerospace professionals, individuals. There are professional organizations for companies and so forth, but I love the AIAA, and you're a member of I guess the Embry-Riddle has a student chapter, right?
Yes, Embry-Riddle does have a student chapter. I joined as a freshman because it was part of DBF, and we also have it. AIA is like the umbrella organization, which has both Design, Build, Fly for aeronautics and IRF-SEDS for the astronautics, and IRF-SEDS is the rocket team at Embry-Riddle.
Absolutely, and so I was an educator member for a long time in the Cape Canaveral section, but now I'm in the Palm Beach section because I moved from northern Florida to actually southern Florida. So I'm a professional member. What's really neat, and we'll do a little plug for the AIAA here, is educators can join at no cost, right? So teachers are always being asked to do things, and normally they have a cost associated with them. But what's beautiful about AIAA is you get this wonderful network of content and professionals and events and ability to make to access doing this grassroots advocacy, and it comes, and you don't have to pay a lot. And my dues are very reasonable as a professional too. So it's a great place. And if you start in your early 20s, you can have 50, 60 years of great connections and whatnot. So AIAA, we just did Congressional Visits Day. Tell me about the folks on your team and what that was like.
So there were 4 of us on the team. Team captain, who's Owen. He is a senior at, I believe, in West Palm Beach or around that area. You know him quite well.
Yes.
And he was also waiting for an MIT acceptance. I don't know. I didn't get to hear that, sadly, because I was not with him for the second day. But there was Owen, who is our team captain, followed by Rebecca, who is another Embry-Riddle student. She is an astro major who is part of IRF-SEDS, so she could, if you ever get a chance to talk to her, she has more experience talking about that. And Kevin Johnson, who is an engineer at Jacobs at Kennedy Space Center, which, fun fact, there are more Jacobs engineers at Kennedy Space Center than there are actually NASA employees.
Right.
So,
Well, I really liked our team this year. For those, Florida is a large congressional delegation. So we had about 12, 13 folks on our team. They range from middle school students, high school students, as he just mentioned, Owen, who has actually called on Congress live before COVID in this very event. And then we had professors, university students. It was great. And I'm really glad to help organize that. And so we broke up into 3 teams just to cover the state. So I was really glad to have you in you were in one meeting with me, right? With your office, and tell me how that went.
it went great, especially for your meeting. That topic specifically, I was talking to Michael Waltz, who represents the district for Embry-Riddle, so Florida's 6th. And of course, I talked to his office, thanking him for the Microplex and the continued support for Embry-Riddle, and that we could always have room for more growth and perhaps federal funding. And we can just make this university, definitely the top in the country. We're definitely up there in terms of aerospace engineering.
Right.
And maybe we could have the best one in the entire country.
I
I
hear you.
hope.
I hear you. So what does your future hold? What's the ideal career that what do you think your first job you hope it will be, and what do you hope is the path that you're going to take as far as at least the topic that you want to work in as an engineer?
Obviously, for topic, I am studying aeronautics. I'd like to keep it that way. I just growing up around fighter jets and missiles, and although the Wallops flight facility was just a couple hours away from me, which that was really nice to have growing up, and I could talk a lot more about that. But just growing up around fighter jets and just seeing it too, and wanting to have the feeling where I want to make sure if I am a part of a team that develops something for the military, especially if it's manned, I want to make sure that said person comes home. I want to make sure that they can do their mission efficiently and effectively, and that they can come home. And I think that's just been part of the drive for me to do aeronautics in general. And that's why I would want to go into military projects, like perhaps the next generation air dominance, which is supposed to replace F-16s, F-22s, and F-18s for the Navy. So that's something I would love to be a part of, though I will admit if I got a job at NASA, I would also consider it too. So.
Right. Well, they definitely have, one of the A's in it's aeronautics, right? NASA, we always think space, but they're also aeronautics. So would that be the 7th generation fighter that you're working on? Is the 22?
That would be the 6th generation fighter if I got involved with that. Obviously, they are beginning work now. And in fact, the Air Force has said that they've worked on 6th generation platforms. That does not mean a brand new clean sheet fighter. That could just mean, oh, we modified this.
Right.
For those of you who don't know, there are different generations of fighters or jet fighters. First generation, you start out with the F-86 Sabre. Second generation, I'm not too sure about. Third generation was what we mostly used in Vietnam, such as the F-4 Phantom II and the just more fighters around there. Then you had the 4th generation fighters, which were influenced from Vietnam. That started with the F-14 Tomcat and has gone all the way up to the F-18 Hornet, and F-16 is another great example. Also too, this is just generally more communication too, because there's actually a version of the 4th gen. It's called the 4.5 gen, where they're not quite 5th gen fighters, which I will get to in a second, but they have the communication technology as a 5th generation fighter would. So that's why it's called 4.5. 5th generation fighters often include stealth. So think of the F-22, which was the first 5th gen fighter ever, the F-35, and the Russian equivalent, the Sukhoi 58, I believe. And then 6th generation fighters, which they're developing now, it's questionably manned, unmanned, and tailless. Though the 6th generation fighters are still kind of, what do we need in terms of a fighter?
Right.
So it's not really drawn up yet. There's not really, other than just it being tailless, because a lot of concepts that have come out, fighters have been tailless. So
that's right.
And we've been going there too, because we started out with the 1st gen fighters, which had a T-tail, or just where you would have the tail and then you'd have the horizontal elevators at the top. Think of it like a DC-9 or a Boeing 717 as far as a T-tail goes. Then, of course, we went to third generation fighters like the F4, which had just one straight tail. Think of it like a regular commercial airliner. And then the fourth gen fighters, with the exception of the F-16, have two tails, and they're angled either slightly like the F-15 or F-18, where it's like this. And fifth gen fighters are the same way. And sixth gen fighters, they hope to eliminate that to increase their stealthiness. So
decrease their radar image, right? It's hard to hit a bumblebee with a Sidewinder missile, I guess. So this is fantastic. So I'm hoping that somebody out there that might be listening from Phantom Works or Skunk Works might keep you in mind down the road, because that'd probably be a good place to design some aircraft.
Yes, definitely.
So as we come to the conclusion of our interview today, I want to ask you, we always tend to ask the same question: what advice, right, for students that might be in the pipeline a little younger than you, that are interested in, let's say, particularly aerospace and the aviation side of it, what advice would you give them to the 10, 12, 14-year-olds down the pipeline?
I would say keep your options open. Try to start things to get familiar with the aviation industry. Obviously, you can read up about certain projects. Different states have different programs. Like in Virginia, I attended space camp there, which that same space camp, I'm actually going to be working as a counselor this summer. I found out through my parents something called the Virginia Space Grant Consortium, where they were basically 6-month online classes followed by 1 week at NASA. So we got to do that. I did it 1 year at Wallops and then 1 year at Langley. And of course, they have different programs for different interests too. Obviously, not everywhere is Virginia, though. That is a good opportunity to familiarize yourself with the industry if you're from Virginia.
That's great.
I know Texas also has one like that too.
Every state gets money from NASA for their space grants, and then how they apply that money, it does vary state to state. But the idea of looking out for camps, I like that. Looking out for camps, look out for space grant opportunities, and wherever there are NASA installations, I think most of them do have summer opportunities, which is, puts you right in the middle of it.
They have both college and even some high school internship opportunities. So if you want, I would encourage applying there. I also would recommend just getting involved with STEM in general. I went to a governor's STEM school in Virginia. There's also magnet schools, which you can be a part of too. Just taking advanced math and science courses too also helps. I will say having just like I mentioned earlier, a general interest in aviation. A lot of people I know on campus, they either got started watching Top Gun, Apollo 13, or Air Disasters on Smithsonian Channel.
Very cool. Very cool.
So that's often where the interest sparks there, or it just shows your interest by saying, "Oh yeah, I watched that a lot when I was younger." Like, yes, absolutely. I'm not the only one.
So, Nicholas, I'm so glad you were with us today. We really appreciate your advice. We wish you the best of success. I hope you'll be back on CBD next year when we will hopefully be live and in person. And Nicholas Marshall, thank you for your time today.
Well, thank you so much. Have a good day.
Thank you.